Hi, I'm Dr. Lori Watson and the co-host of Foreplay.
I'm your co-host, George Fowler, former firefighter, your couples therapist who loves to talk about sex.
Woo! Let's discuss everything about the best sexual techniques to building your emotional intimacy, which is really necessary for great sex.
We bring sound, concrete tools to reframe your relationship problems and learn how to fall in love again and feel desire.
Listen to Foreplay Radio on the iHeart app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everybody, welcome and thank you for listening to this, the 150th episode of Marriage Therapy Radio. I'm Zach, I'm here with Laura. I actually think that 150 episodes is a really big deal, but Laura told me that it wasn't, and so we don't make a big deal about it in the episode. We do, however, have a shiny new email address. You can now reach us at info@marriagetherapyradio.com. So drop us a line, say hi, tell us what we want to hear about, or just give me a dad joke. I actually just got a whole bunch of dad jokes from a listener in Australia or Singapore, New Zealand, somewhere. And I'm excited to share those, but next week. Also, check out our website. We've been making some changes, which is fun for me because I don't know anything about websites and it feels like I'm getting smarter, which is cool. But for today, we're talking about enduring vulnerabilities, or some people call them triggers. It's the things or stories from our past that sometimes creep into our present and wreak some havoc or hijack conversations that we're having with our partners, and we get to talk about what you can do about that. As always, it's a very cool conversation. Stick around. What do they say? If you're silent for longer than like 7 seconds on the radio, people are going to jam the channel. I got to tell you something. And I'm going to give you credit because you deserve it. But
thank you. I don't know what this credit's going to be. But
I have recently just realized how much I appreciate the name Marriage Therapy Radio. I just think it's super cool, and I'm glad that you thought of it. And also, like, can I give credit where credit is due? No,
it's not
just
me.
take it. No, just absorb it. Take it. Own it all. Just receive it.
I can't own it. I literally have been, before our podcast, I was listening to another podcast with a very similar name.
Yeah.
I think it's called Foreplay, Sex Therapy Radio. And I was like, hey, that's really good. I'm going to go ahead and do that.
Isn't just Foreplay Radio? Anyway, kudos to you for coming up with a cool name. And I think the part that I like about it is the radio. Like, I think I don't know. I'm kind of in a retro mood lately, and I like thinking about the knobs and turning them. So anyway, I don't know. I'm enamored lately of my
side note.
What?
Speaking about the radio, I saw an image the other day that kind of put me, I don't know. I was like, wow, that's really cool. Back in the day, there was a polio scare and kids were not allowed to go to school. It was a scare. You're laughing
back in the day.
But
back in the olden times.
In the olden times, yeah.
Okay.
Isn't that what, do you have the shot in your arm that left the dent? You know what I'm talking about. My mom has it.
The vaccine? I do have the shot in my arm, but it did not leave a dent. Oh, no. Sorry, I got vaccinated. You got vaccinated, but what am I thinking of that is the... I don't know.
Not COVID. I'm talking about...
I did. I got vaccinated for COVID.
I'm not talking about COVID right now.
Okay, you're talking about polio. Sure. Back in the day.
I can't believe...
Tuberculosis, whatever. What are you trying to communicate to us?
Well,
here?
I would be able to communicate it fully if you didn't interrupt me so much.
That's rule number 6 or 3 or 2 from last week. Don't interrupt your partner.
Such a good episode, by the way. That was brilliant. What I'm trying to say is that there was an image and it was kids that weren't allowed to go to school. And so they were homeschooling by doing school by the radio. And I just was like, I thought it was really cool to see this image, black and white, of these children all huddled around the radio trying to do their schoolwork. I was like, wow, you know what? We are not in anything new with COVID. We have done this before. It's just we haven't done it in this generation. It's just really interesting to see, we have done this before.
Oh, I know what it is. It's I was like, there's a pithy statement about it. This is what it is. It's everything old is new again.
Yeah. The orange is the new black.
Oh, you know what I always say?
What do you always say, Zach?
February is the new January.
That's right. Do you have a resolution, by the way, for February?
Sort of. I mean, I'm just, like I said, I'm just on this a little bit of reclaiming my head, my body, my teeth. I'm on a flossing streak. My flossing streak is up to 22 now.
Excellent. Nice work. And because you can't see Zach's teeth, it's one of his best features.
Well, they're aligned. They're not super white, but they're aligned. Hey, speaking of Marriage Therapy Radio, I wanted to let everyone know that we have shiny new email addresses at marriagetherapyradio.com. We're abandoning our old one and we're taking on new ones.
When you say we have shiny new email addresses,
Yeah.
Are you going to make sure that they are live by the time this episode goes?
I'm not going to, but someone else is.
All right. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah.
the man behind it all.
So for now, if you want to send us an email, you can send it to info@marriagetherapyradio.com. And that's,
I like it.
And then maybe we'll have some more because we got a lot of things coming. We have a new website, Marriage Therapy Radio. It's not a new website, but I made some changes. It's shiny and new.
You revamped it.
Yeah. That's all. I'm all about shiny and new, starting with my teeth.
I like it.
Or my gums.
It a lot.
Yeah.
Do you know what I wanted to tell you about is, what's been going on with like the stock market? If you haven't heard, you would be like me because I don't pay any attention to any of the news. But the only reason I know about this is because my husband got into it. And he comes to me, he's like, hey, babe, I'm going to put some money into GameStop. And I was like, wait, isn't that like business down the road that just shut down? And he was like,
it's like, hey, babe, I'm going to buy some stock in Blockbuster.
Exactly. That's exactly what it feels like. By the way, Bend, Oregon has the last remaining Blockbuster.
I know that.
It is an actual store here.
I know that. You know how I know that?
Okay. Why? How?
Because when Abby was on TV,
yes,
they shot a scene in that Blockbuster.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Did she actually come to Bend and shoot the scene?
She wasn't in that scene, but
got it.
But it was in that Blockbuster. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So we made some money off of GameStop. We were like one of the success stories, which is pretty nice because I think that, sometimes when you gamble, it is not a success story.
Yeah. Most of the time when you gamble, it's not a success story. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that I have a shiny new car.
Okay. So shiny new things. Yeah.
New things.
Yeah.
So if you hear me brah, brah, around the corner, that's me.
Yeah.
Kicking up dust.
Yeah. When you drive your shiny new car up to Seattle.
Yeah.
That's the only scenario in which I would hear you around the corner because I'm not coming to Bend.
No.
It's snowy.
Hey,
it's snowy and gross there, right?
It is. We just got like, I don't know, 1.5 inches of beautiful new snow.
No, I want to go to the sun.
Zach and I are huge fans of getting support, especially during abnormally stressful times like these. This is why we have partnered with BetterHelp to put you in contact with licensed professional counselors in your area. Tap into the world's largest network of licensed, accredited, and experienced counselors who can help you with a range of issues, including depression, anxiety, relationships, trauma, grief, and more. With BetterHelp's counselors, you get the same professionalism and quality that you would expect from an in-office counselor, but with the ability to communicate when and how you want. The matching process is quick but thorough, and you have the ability to communicate with your therapist how you like it, whether it be messaging, over the phone, or video conferencing. I know that in-person therapy sessions aren't feasible right now, and a lot of therapists are booked out, but don't let that stop you from getting the support that you need. The cost is less than half of what Zach and I charge, which is kind of unheard of. And when you register with BetterHelp, you're supporting Marriage Therapy Radio. Go to trybetterhelp.com/MTR to register. Try TRY better BETTER help. HELP.com/MTR to register with BetterHelp. Let's talk about something that could help people.
Okay, sure.
Here's the thing that I've been kicking around.
Okay.
And it's this idea.
I have no idea what this is.
That we have been, I've mentioned it before, but I think that if we get down to it, a lot of our arguments end up being, or misunderstandings end up being filtered through a lens. And that lens is created through what I would call an enduring vulnerability. Actually, I don't call it that. I think John Gottman calls it that. But we have sort of this script that is written maybe from a very early age that we carry around with us. And you talked about it one time and I really liked it. You said there's two. I am not enough and I'm too much, right?
Well, there's at least two.
You've said before?
Sure. I have said that before.
Okay.
There's at least two of those. Yeah.
Okay. And that could absolutely be a script of yours. Another script could be an understanding of like, I am, let's see here. I am selfish. And so that might be something that you believe about yourself. It's a script that you hear and it's kind of triggering. Or I am worthless. I am not important. I am gosh, I mean, any number
I
of
deserve
things.
to be bullied.
What's that?
I deserve to be bullied.
I deserve to be bullied. Sure. I mean, it could be anything that you are carrying around,
Sure.
and it takes a long time. And I think most people are not aware of this. What I am sharing with you is like the deep down kind of like big, bold thing that plays itself out through any number of conversations that you have with people, interactions that you have with others. But it's like the script underneath it all that can come into play in some of the most difficult times in our lives. And when it comes up, it can be incredibly reactive. So I guess what I'm saying is how to notice when it's coming up is an interaction with your partner where all of a sudden something blows up. Like maybe you say something and you're like, I don't understand. I don't understand why this was so inflammatory to my partner, because what you said is not what your partner heard. What they heard was something that was confirming that deep, dark thing that is underneath it all that caused everything to just kind of blow up. And I think the reason why I'm talking about this is for our listeners to start to get kind of curious of what might be your operating mode, what might be that script that is playing out that when it gets tapped into or when you hear it, it blows everything up for you.
Okay.
Okay. All right. This is the part where you add some information.
Okay. Well, like I said, this is the first, I didn't know what we're talking about. So I had to kind of wrap my head around it, what I was going to say. This is also the part of couples therapy that I'm not very good at. Because especially lately, I've dropped into more of a systems, like how do we correct the systems mentality? And it's hard to do that. And systems can get gummed up by these things that you're calling enduring vulnerabilities.
Sure.
Because I might think, oh, this is easy. This is a solvable problem between these two functional adults that I'm looking at. But the reality is that there's this tension that is at play for these two people that sometimes they don't know a whole lot about. Exactly. I like to think about this as the operating system that they have, much like a computer that sort of got built in and for them. And so like when I threw out, I deserve to be bullied, maybe, when you were in the third grade, you learned that bullies had power and you didn't. As long as you stayed below the radar and gave them your lunch money, you could survive. And somehow you deserved that fate. Like it wasn't like that's just who you were. And now, look, that's not true. It's not right. It's not good. But it does get ingrained for some of us early on. We can learn that from our third grade bully. We can learn it from our parents. We can learn it from our early romantic relationships. I think the key to what you're describing, though, is that when these things creep into the present moment, it's helpful for couples to have an awareness of this so that they can go, oh, this isn't necessarily about you, or this isn't about, or you're not my bully. You're not my dad. You're not my first girlfriend. You're you. But what you're doing right now is triggering this response in me. Right. That's challenging. In the therapy world, this is one of the terms for this is transference, right? It's where in the therapy world, where if I have a client who maybe I look like their dad, they treat me like their dad, or they expect me to treat them as their dad would treat them. That's called transference. We also learn about what's called countertransference. So when I have a client who maybe looks like my dad, maybe I expect them to, or acts like my dad, whatever, I expect them to trigger, or they do trigger the things. And the key for us in our training is to be able to A, recognize it, and B, respond to it with sort of distance and integrity. So that'd be my initial response to your idea around enduring vulnerabilities. But why is it on your mind today? Like, why are you thinking about that right now?
I'm thinking about it particularly in the sense that like when we sign up to do relationship with other people, I think that it's really important to differentiate between what's my responsibility and what's my partner's responsibility. And I find that a lot of couples recognize that, hey, my partner has this sort of enduring vulnerability. They don't recognize it as that enduring vulnerability. What they see is reactivity. And so they're in relationship, they're chatting with their partner about something that seems pretty benign. And all of a sudden, it's like the response they say is like, I got so confused. It's like all of a sudden I watched my partner just implode and I started backtracking and I'm like, what the hell did I do? And it's like, okay, so that's really good information. Your partner imploded about something that you're saying this was pretty stinking benign. Because I think most people know when they're intentionally trying to inflict pain or harm to their partner. They know when they are being critical. They know when they're being contemptuous. They know when they're raising their voice. But what I'm talking about is there was this thing that happened, and all of a sudden my partner just lost it. And I'm like, hey, that's really good information. Tell me more, because my guess is you have a history of witnessing your partner have these reactions that you couldn't make sense of. And maybe they couldn't make sense of those reactions. And so what I'm asking for these people in my office to do is let's make kind of like a list. Like, let's gather data and evidence of times when this occurred and see if we can find if there's anything that is common among these interactions. And that might help point you to a reason or point you to what your partner's enduring vulnerability is. So I think that's number one is important, trying to understand not only your own script that might be playing out or your, I think you called it like your mode of operation.
It's your operating system. Yeah.
Your operating system, like understanding yours, your own, but also understanding your partner's, because you can gain so much empathy for your partner. But at the same time, like there's only so much that you can do where it's like, I have a responsibility to kind of protect my partner, right? Like when you say, I'm going to do relationship with you, which means that I'm aware of your soft spot. And so I'm going to do everything that I can not to poke at it, not to trigger it, whatever it might be. But then also you, as that person with that soft spot, have quite a bit of responsibility as well in order to recognize when it's getting triggered and communicate that to your partner in a sense of saying something like, hey, I know that you're probably confused by my reaction right now. And I want you to know that what just happened here is me. That was you triggering something that is very old for me, a very old script that is very sensitive. And I might need some time right now to kind of like self-soothe, but I want you to know that this has nothing to do with you. And so I think the reason this is deep work, by the way, for couples, this is not scratching the surface of couples work. This is like deep stuff.
Yeah. And I think, I'm on this kick lately where I'm sort of like, okay, I have to operate under an assumption, particularly the more I see couples online, right? Just because it's hard to lean into the humanity of what's really going on. So I start with an assumption that because they're spending time and money to talk to me, they want to feel more connected and less sad. I know that's a thing I say a lot, but it's like just a place that I start. Or I've kind of blown it up a little bit more to what they want is to feel more intimacy, more holistic intimacy. Okay, how do you do that? Well, the best scenario for that is that you have two emotionally intelligent adults coming to face to face to sort of map this out. And then maybe I get to help with my own store of emotional intelligence. But once again, professional expertise is not the same as personal mastery. So
yeah.
So the three of us are working together on this thing, and I have to operate under the assumption that they want more intimacy, and that the best chance for them to get that is through a raised level of emotional intelligence. And so what you're talking about is exactly that, right? It's enough emotional intelligence or EQ to be able to look at yourself and go, there's something else going on here. Like, I'm aware of something that's happening for me. What's happening for me is not necessarily about you. You are pressing this button, and we've been married for 25 years. So it'd be nice if you understood that button better than you currently do, which I think is the 25-year work. It's the deep work.
Right.
It may actually even be the pre-married work for those of you who are kind of like, oh, what do I do? Well, you find where your partner's buttons are, and you learn how to protect them, not just not push them,
right,
but protect them,
Yeah.
And in the most sort of traumatic, but I was going to
interject.
Please do. But let me just finish this one thing, because
sure.
In the most traumatic version of this, it's survivors of sexual abuse, right? Or it's survivors of physical abuse. Like, these are buttons that got deeply ingrained early on to their, like, the DNA of their way of thinking about how the world, whether or not the world is safe. And so it's really important for partners to join the safety brigade, for lack of a better term at the moment, to help protect those buttons, because again, if you're the victim of abuse like that, like, there's very little you can do, and you certainly can't be blamed, for that sort of thing. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
yes, you were going to interject.
Well, I mean, I think because you got to it, I should actually, this is probably a really good example of why you shouldn't interrupt your partner, is that oftentimes your partner is getting to it anyway. And by you interrupting them, it's the assumption that they're not getting to it, but you actually got exactly to what I was wanting you to say.
Oh, thanks. Let me tell you like my version of that, which is when we watch television at our house, somebody will ask a question and I'll go, wait 10 seconds. Because a really well-written show will seed a question for you and it will answer it for you in about 10 seconds if you're quiet enough. Like, I'm confused. Wait, what's going on? The answer, I promise you the answer is coming in about 10 seconds. So
100%.
In our house, we're just like, wait 10 seconds or 10 seconds. 10 seconds.
It's coming. Yeah. It's coming. I know when I watch like the Art and Science of Love with John and Julie will answer probably 50% of the questions with, it's coming. Just hold your horses there. It's coming. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of these scripts, because I think, if you're listening, you might be a little lost, like, gosh, what could that be? What could that be?
Ooh, good call.
I think, some of them would be like, you were talking about the bully. I deserve to be bullied. And when I heard that and you started to describe it, I heard I'm powerless. Mm-hmm. That's what came out for me, is like, I'm powerless in this situation and I'm going to give up. You have the power and I don't. I'm powerless. Another one could be, I'm not enough. And we talked about that in an earlier episode, is that a lot of times people are operating out of, I'm too much or I'm not enough. Mm-hmm. And that could be, I think an easy way to think about where that plays out would be in the bedroom, is like, I'm not enough. My body isn't the way that you want it to look. I don't like the sexual positions that you like. I don't have the sexual desire that you have, or like the wanting to have sex all the time. I'm not enough. I'm too much could be, I want sex all the time. I want to have sex while I'm pinned up against a wall and tied. I'm too much for you.
And if I let you know, you won't be able to handle it.
It won't be okay.
If I let you know what's really going on inside my brain, you won't be able to handle it. Mm-hmm. So that's the extension of that story.
Yeah. I think another one could be, I'm selfish. I'm self-centered.
And I'm not enough. And if I try, I'll fail and you will punish me. So I'm not going to try.
So, there's a lot that is underlying so much of our actions and our thoughts, and even the way that I love that you said this is, and I don't think it's just survivors of trauma. I think that it can be really anything, because we experience trauma all throughout our life, and how we internalize that trauma certainly shapes the way in which we view the world. And if you're viewing the world through the lens of, I'm selfish, I'm unlovable, I'm worthless, I'm not enough, I'm powerless, just imagine how you're showing up with your partner. Your partner could be saying the most lovely, connecting, wonderful things to you, or your partner could be simply bringing up conflict and saying, hey, I have a want, wish, need, or desire. And the way you interpret that is, I'm powerless. Yeah. I'm worthless. And it's like, we just missed the boat to connect here.
So let me talk about this a little bit. I had a client session just about an hour ago, and this happened in session. And I said, I'm probably going to end up talking about this on the podcast. So if you're listening, here we go. This is it. So thank you, because they already told me you're welcome. Yeah. But what happened was, she said, this is a thing that I feel. And then he said, well, I don't know if you should feel that, because, well, he didn't say that, but let me put it this way. He said, okay. And also, if you thought about it this way instead of that way, maybe you would feel differently, is kind of what he said. I watched her get defensive about that. And before she responded, I said, hold on 1 second. I'm not going to say her name, but her name was Sally. And I said, Sally,
right,
I want you to know that what he just said is almost exactly what I would have said. I would have almost said word for word what he just offered you. And so here's what I want to ask you about. Can you imagine treating him the way you would treat me if now that he's said that? Meaning,
right,
because I have no dog in this fight. I haven't betrayed her before. I haven't tried to get her to change her behavior. I haven't been her, I'm in neutral. So you can hear me be curious, right? You can hear me be compassionate. Right. You can hear me be, can you hear him? Can you take off the lens of criticism that you heard? Right. Or certainty that you heard, and replace it with like the lens of compassion and curiosity? Because what he's asking you to do is really like spot on, right? It's to imagine the better outcome to this narrative that you're running.
Okay.
But because it was him,
Mm-hmm.
she had a harder time. And so for me, it was like, oh, okay, so what's the variable? Well, the variable is, I think it's curiosity and compassion, right? Both in the way that it's asked by me and also the way that she hears it, which it goes back to kind of like what we hear sometimes isn't what our partner said.
Right.
So it's an interesting thing to think about, because words aren't just words, right? Words belong to the speaker, and they belong to the
relationship
and the hearer
that you have with the speaker.
Yeah. And so we do have some choices about how am I going to perceive this right now?
Yeah.
I think there is some merit to sort of leaning into compassionate curiosity around your triggers, both so that you can be aware of them for the other, but also for yourself.
So here's another piece in what I think you're asking for her to do, and what I think a goal of therapy would be. The goal of working together as a couple is, number one, recognizing your own script, your own enduring vulnerability. What is the way that you recognize completely changes the way that you show up in the world and how you view the world?
And let me say, this is fun work. I mean, it's hard and it can actually be painful, but it's so very rewarding when you take a minute to look into your own stuff and start to make sense of it, and to give yourself a little bit of grace, because, you know, who you are has been shaped by who you've known. And that's just part of the deal, right? And so to kind of go, oh yeah, this is me, but this has an origin story. And the origin story isn't always I'm not enough or I'm too much, right?
Yeah. Being able to communicate that to your partner is such a gift. And then in response of being able to say, hey, partner, I am going to commit to working diligently on not pressing that button, but instead really protecting your enduring vulnerability. If you come from a scarcity mindset, then let's figure out as a couple how we can soothe you and create security where there is a lack of security, and how I can protect your enduring vulnerability, knowing you are also going to protect mine. Because I think we just go about this blindly, as most partners do. And when you start to get into it with one another, you are just setting off a whole lot of bombs, because you are tapping into your partner's enduring vulnerability. You get a massive reaction. It confuses you, triggers you, and now you guys are off to the races.
Totally.
But I think the goal is to understand for yourself, and then also try and understand your partners so that you can protect one another rather than triggering each other.
Yeah. I mean, that's ideal. And, you know, it's worth saying that certainly your partner has created some of the new triggers, some of the new vulnerabilities in your life and in your relationship. That's generally not a helpful thing to point out when you're in the midst of something that feels sort of out of control or out of the norm. You did this to me. This is because you never listen or something. But I think it is helpful to become educated as much as possible together about the things that are challenging in the relationship that come from seemingly out of nowhere.
Yeah, it came from somewhere. Let's get curious. Again, like if we're going to rename this podcast, it can be something based around curiosity.
No, I like Marriage Therapy Radio just fine.
I do.
It's my favorite.
I do too. Hey, I'm going to go take my father-in-law out for lunch, so I should probably land this plane.
All right, well, go say hi to your father-in-law.
All right, adios. Hey everyone, thanks so much for listening to this episode of Marriage Therapy Radio. One thing that we are super excited about and has been part of our lives the last couple of weeks is, as we've been reading the book by Esther Perel, Mating in Captivity, we're looking forward to meeting with all of you in our live. And this is going to be live in the sense that I'm going to see your faces and you're going to see our faces, and we're going to just chit chat about this book. And we're excited to do it on February 15th at 9:00 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you haven't signed up yet, do so that we can give you the link to join our live Zoom call. And you can do that by going to marriagetherapyradio.com, and you will find that under the products tab. For all of you, thank you for all of your time and attention, making your relationship better today than it was yesterday.